The air in the bunker tastes like concrete dust and stale cigarette smoke. 20 feet of reinforced steel and earth separate this room from the streets of Berlin. But you can still hear it, the dull, rhythmic thud of Soviet artillery. A colonel stands in the map room, staring at a piece of paper in his trembling hand. It's an order, typed, stamped, signed by the Führer himself. It commands him to launch a counteroffensive with Army Group Steiner, a force of 50,000 men, tanks, air support, the works. There's just one problem. Army Group Steiner doesn't exist. It never did. The men are gone. The tanks are scrap. The ammunition is ash. But the order is real. And so is the question burning in his mind as the walls shake again. When does following orders become the greatest act of treason against your own people? This is the story of how Adolf Hitler's final orders didn't just fail to save Germany, they actively destroyed it. In the last weeks of World War II, as the Third Reich collapsed under the weight of Allied and Soviet forces, the man who had once commanded the most powerful war machine in Europe retreated into a bunker beneath Berlin. And from that bunker, disconnected from reality, he issued a cascade of orders that accelerated Germany's disintegration faster than any enemy bomb ever could. You're about to witness how phantom armies, impossible directives, and a leader's refusal to accept reality didn't prolong the war. They shattered what remained of Germany's ability to defend itself, condemned its own people, and guaranteed maximum suffering in the final days. By the end, you'll understand why Hitler's greatest enemy in April 1945 wasn't Stalin or Eisenhower. It was himself. By April 1945, Germany is a nation in freefall. The Eastern Front has collapsed. Soviet forces are less than 40 miles from Berlin. In the West, American and British armies have crossed the Rhine and are pushing deep into the heartland. The Luftwaffe is grounded. No fuel, no pilots, no planes. The Wehrmacht is a skeleton. Divisions that once numbered 15,000 men now count in the hundreds. Boys as young as 14 and men over 60 are being handed rifles and told to hold the line. But inside the Führerbunker, a different war is being fought. A war of maps and colored pins and reports that bear no resemblance to the chaos above ground. Hitler has retreated into this subterranean command post beneath the Reich Chancellery, a labyrinth of concrete rooms, flickering lights, and recycled air. He sleeps irregularly. His hands tremble. His left arm hangs limp from the aftermath of Stauffenberg's assassination attempt the previous July. The bomb that nearly killed him 9 months earlier had failed by inches. That failure sealed more than Hitler's fate. It eliminated the last internal check on his power. And in 72 hours, that unchecked power would issue an order so disconnected from reality that it would break the German command structure forever. Now, in April, the bunker has become a theater of illusion. Generals arrive with casualty reports and are met with rage. Hitler dismisses their assessments as defeatism, cowardice, betrayal. He paces the map room, moving unit markers that represent armies which no longer exist. His staff has learned not to correct him. The consequences are too severe. And so the reports are edited. The numbers are softened. The truth is filtered through layers of fear until what reaches Hitler's ears is a version of reality that allows him to keep believing in victory. This is where the blunder begins, not in a single decision, but in a system where reality itself has been exiled. Hitler's strategic vision, once sharp, brutal, effective, has collapsed into paranoid fantasy. He speaks of wonder weapons that will turn the tide, of loyalty that will overcome material disadvantage, of enemies who will fracture and sue for peace if Germany can just hold on a little longer. He issues orders as if the German war machine of 1940 still exists, as if willpower alone can summon divisions from thin air. And his generals, exhausted, terrified, broken, begin to make a choice. Some attempt to reason with him and are removed from command. Others nod, salute, and leave the bunker knowing the orders they carry are death sentences. A few try to quietly disobey, hoping to save what they can. But the machinery of obedience is still functional, and so the orders go out. Orders that demand the impossible. Orders that will accelerate the very collapse they claim to prevent. April 16, 1945. The Soviet offensive begins along the Zilo Heights, the last major defensive line before Berlin. Over 2 million Red Army soldiers, 6,000 tanks. More artillery than has ever been concentrated in a single battle. The German Ninth Army, undermanned, undersupplied, dug into hastily prepared positions, braces for impact. They know what's coming. What they don't know is that help isn't. In the bunker, Hitler is fixated on a different battle. He's convinced that SS Obergruppenführer Felix Steiner can launch a devastating counteroffensive from the north, cutting through Soviet lines and relieving Berlin. On paper, this makes sense. Army Group Steiner is marked on the map. It has a commander. It has a mission. There's just one problem. Army Group Steiner is a name attached to approximately 10,000 exhausted, poorly armed men, most of them rear echelon troops, Luftwaffe ground personnel, and Volkssturm militia with barely any training. No tanks, no air support, no ammunition reserves. Steiner himself knows this force cannot attack. It can barely defend. But the order comes anyway. Typed, official, unambiguous. Steiner reads it and feels something break inside him. He knows what this means. If he obeys, his men will be slaughtered for nothing. If he disobeys, he'll be labeled a traitor. He chooses a third option. He stalls. He requests clarification. He reports equipment shortages. He does everything except attack. And in doing so, he inadvertently reveals the central truth of Germany's final weeks. The command structure is a fiction. April 22, 1945. The daily briefing in the bunker. Reports flood in. The Zilo Heights have fallen. Soviet tanks are pushing toward the city outskirts. The Ninth Army is disintegrating, and Army Group Steiner has not moved. Hitler demands an explanation. His staff hesitates. Then someone speaks the truth. Steiner did not have the forces to attack. The units marked on the map don't exist in any meaningful strength. What follows is one of the most documented mental collapses in military history. Hitler erupts. He screams that he has been betrayed by cowards, by incompetence, by the entire Wehrmacht officer corps. He accuses his generals of sabotage. He declares that the war is lost, not because of material reality, but because of disloyalty. For a moment, the mask drops. The illusion shatters. Everyone in the room sees it. Then something worse happens. He recovers. The rage subsides. And in that silence, that terrible, loaded silence, everyone realizes he's about to do it again. New orders follow. The 12th Army will disengage from the Americans and march toward Berlin. The 9th Army will break out and link up with them. Together, they will crush the Soviets in a decisive pincer movement. On the map, it looks bold. In reality, it is madness. The 12th Army is over 100 kilometers away, low on fuel, and engaged with a superior enemy. The 9th Army is surrounded and bleeding out. The roads are clogged with refugees. The Soviets control the air. None of this matters. The order goes out. And here's the cruelty of it. The soldiers try to obey. Commanders who know the mission is suicide still order their men forward because the alternative is execution for treason. Thousands die attempting a breakout that was never viable. Vehicles are abandoned. Units dissolve. Men march toward a city that is already falling. The orders don't save Germany. They consume it. April 25, 1945. Soviet forces complete the encirclement of Berlin. Inside the city, over 2 million civilians are trapped alongside the remnants of the Wehrmacht, the SS, the Hitler Youth, and the Volkssturm. There is no evacuation plan, no surrender authorization, only orders to fight to the last. 14-year-old boys crouch behind rubble with single-shot anti-tank weapons. Elderly men are handed rifles with 5 rounds. Many refuse. Some are executed on the spot. SS enforcers conduct public hangings. Bodies are left dangling from lampposts with signs reading, "I was too cowardly to defend the fatherland." And still, the orders keep coming. Counterattack here. Hold that bridge. Reinforce a sector that no longer exists. Commanders stop reporting accurate information because honesty is punished. The fog of war becomes a fog of lies. Meanwhile, civilians suffer. Hospitals are shelled. Refugee columns are strafed. Food distribution collapses because logistics officers have been reassigned to phantom units. The city dies not only from Soviet assault, but from impossible orders. April 28, 1945. The 12th Army's relief attempt has failed. The 9th Army is destroyed. Soviet forces are within a mile of the Reich Chancellery. The inner circle fractures. Goering flees. Himmler attempts secret surrender talks. Hitler brands them traitors. Then the Nero Decree returns. Bridges are blown. Power stations destroyed. Cities plunged into darkness. It is not strategy. It is vengeance. And at last, officers understand the truth. They are no longer defending Germany. They are destroying it. Some obey out of fear, others out of exhaustion. Many simply stop. The command structure doesn't collapse. It dissolves. Germany surrenders on May 8, 1945. But the war had effectively ended days earlier, not through decisive victory, but through internal implosion. Hitler's final orders didn't extend resistance. They guaranteed disintegration. Forces that could have withdrawn were annihilated. Resources that could have defended civilians were wasted chasing illusions. The strategic consequences reshaped Europe. The human cost was staggering. More German soldiers died in the final 3 months than in many earlier campaigns combined. Cities were destroyed not because they had to be defended, but because retreat was forbidden. The collapse looked like defeat. It was, in part, administrative suicide. The real blunder wasn't issuing bad orders. It was creating a system where reality could no longer reach the person issuing them. Bad news was treason. Truth was punished. Obedience was absolute. By April 1945, Hitler wasn't commanding a war. He was directing a fantasy and demanding real people die to sustain it. This is what catastrophic failure of command looks like. Not chaos, but rigid obedience in defiance of reality. The bunker still exists beneath Berlin. Concrete rooms, empty corridors. Tour guides talk about the suicides, the bodies. They rarely talk about the orders. The paper trail that sent men into unwinnable battles, that destroyed infrastructure, that turned collapse into catastrophe. Hitler died on April 30, 1945. The orders lived on, and they killed more Germans than any bomb ever could. History remembers where it ended, but it should also remember the phantom armies, the impossible offensives, and the officers who stood holding papers that commanded the undoable. Because the real lesson isn't about madness. It's about what happens when power becomes so absolute that reality is no longer welcome in the room. Next, the men who tried to stop it, the briefcase bomb, the seconds that almost changed history, and the failure that sealed everything.